The MS-13 gang is infamous for its brutal killings with machetes, drug trafficking, prostitution, and other criminal activities. Most new members of MS-13 in the United States are middle or high school students from immigrant communities. This criminal organization thrives by spreading poison into American society, trafficking children for sexual exploitation, and committing horrific violence in the neighborhoods where they operate, said U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions before meeting with federal officials to discuss strategies for eliminating the gang from American society. MS-13, also known as Mara Salvatrucha, was formed in Los Angeles in the 1980s following a massive wave of migration driven by the Civil War in El Salvador. Information gathered after a large-scale crackdown by Salvadoran police revealed that MS-13 generates up to $31.2 million annually from illegal activities. Under the Obama administration, despite an increase in MS-13 arrests in both the U.S. and El Salvador, the gang became stronger than ever. Initially, its members were mainly Salvadoran immigrants. They competed with M-18, a Mexican-American gang, for territory. Through this violent struggle, MS-13 expanded rapidly and became one of the most organized and violent gangs in the United States. To further expand, MS-13 recruited refugees from other Central American countries. The gang is notorious for recruiting children as young as 8, with total membership exceeding 100,000. Betrayal is punished with death or the severing of limbs. In 1999, Brenda Paz, a 13-year-old Honduran immigrant, joined a local MS-13 faction in Los Angeles. She later fled to Virginia in 2002 with her boyfriend and was arrested for car theft. Her boyfriend, Dennis Rivera, was a high-ranking MS-13 member in Northern Virginia and a suspect in the brutal beheading of a teenager named Joaquin Diaz. At 17, Paz agreed to provide internal information about the gang in exchange for protection under the Federal Witness Protection Program. In a series of recorded interrogations, Paz detailed MS-13's crimes. However, she felt isolated within the program and was eventually lured back into the gang. At the time, her boyfriend, imprisoned and awaiting trial for Diaz's murder, plotted to have her killed. In July 2003, a fisherman discovered the bloodied body of a young woman along the Shenandoah River in Virginia. It was Brenda Paz, 17 weeks pregnant and stabbed 16 times. MS-13's expanding influence extended even into prisons. In the U.S., the gang dominated cities like Los Angeles, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., New York, New Jersey, and Houston. The gang became a significant threat in North America, prompting the U.S. government to begin deporting members back to Central America. However, this strategy backfired. Deported criminals returned to El Salvador, recruited new members, and then re-entered the U.S. illegally, leading to a surge in suburban crime. This forced the FBI to establish a special task force to suppress the gang. Despite efforts to control it, the gang continued to grow. In October 2012, the U.S. Treasury Department froze MS-13's financial assets and designated it a transnational criminal organization. In El Salvador, MS-13's power extended into prisons. Members were given their own cells, and even guards were too afraid to enter. The Pena Ciudad Barrios prison was reserved exclusively for MS-13 members. In 2014, a decade after the Salvadoran government attempted to separate the territories of MS-13 and rival gang Barrio 18, the move was deemed a failure. This decision came after a massacre in 2004, where 32 members from both gangs were killed and beheaded in prison, the deadliest prison massacre in El Salvador's history. Determined to eliminate MS-13, U.S. President Donald Trump recently declared a full-scale war against the gang, which he said had thrived under Barack Obama. According to The Sun, MS-13, now boasting around 100,000 members, had become Trump's #1 enemy on American soil. Trump vowed to wipe out the gang, no matter the challenges. We cannot allow this to continue. We will secure our borders, intensify immigrant crackdowns, and cut off financial supplies to this gang, Attorney General Sessions stated. And if you're a member of MS-13, we will find you. On July 28, 2017, President Trump reiterated his determination to eliminate MS-13, which has about 10,000 members in the United States. Most members are immigrants from El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala, including some born in the U.S. According to Montgomery County Court on November 22nd, police arrested suspect Miguel Angel Lopez Abrego, 19, along with approximately 10 other MS-13 gang members. They were accused of brutally murdering, decapitating, and removing the heart of a man before burying his body in a park near Washington, D.C. Though the victim's identity has not been disclosed, police reported that he was stabbed over 100 times by MS-13 members in Wheaton Regional Park, Maryland. According to police, the gang used walkie-talkies to coordinate the attack. They lured the victim to Wheaton Regional Park and carried out the murder. His body was discovered on September 5th in a pre-dug grave within the forest of the park. Authorities believe the victim was likely a Hispanic man from Annapolis, Maryland. The Washington Post reported that the murder took place in early September, but police only learned about it after receiving a tip. The informant led officers to the burial site. Subsequently, Miguel Angel Lopez Abrego was arrested on November 11th in North Carolina. More than 10 days later, on November 22nd, he was charged with first-degree murder and is currently in custody for further interrogation. According to Maryland Assistant State Attorney Kelly McGann, suspect Miguel Angel Lopez Abrego was the first to stab the victim in the chest, and police recovered a 40-centimeter knife used in the crime. Authorities are still hunting for the remaining suspects. This murder occurred during a nationwide crackdown operation in which police arrested 214 MS-13 members who were charged with crimes including murder, robbery, and drug trafficking. According to media reports, MS-13 has become a central focus of President Donald Trump's campaign against organized crime. In a speech on July 28th in Long Island, New York, President Trump referred to MS-13 members as animals and condemned their horrific crimes. We will restore safety to our streets and peace to our communities. We will eliminate the cowardly MS-13 gang and others like them. They kidnap, extort, rob, and rape. They beat their victims with bats, hack them with knives, and have turned peaceful parks and beautiful neighborhoods into blood-soaked killing fields, Trump declared. Attorney General Jeff Sessions also expressed his determination to eradicate MS-13, frequently highlighting the gang's dangerous nature and its links to illegal immigration. On August 12, 2017, the FBI announced the capture of Walter Yovani Gomez, an MS-13 member from Woodbridge, Virginia, after 4 years on the run. Gomez, originally from Honduras, had entered the U.S. illegally and was one of the FBI's top 10 most wanted fugitives. He was wanted in connection with the brutal murder of Julio Matute, a rival gang member, on May 8, 2011, in Plainfield, New Jersey. The FBI had offered a $100,000 reward for information leading to Gomez's arrest. The FBI accused MS-13 of focusing primarily on extortion, drug trafficking, and local theft while maintaining connections with transnational Mexican drug cartels. Given the complexity and danger of the gang, the FBI had to establish a specialized unit dedicated to combating MS-13. The Texas Department of Public Safety, DPS, once declared MS-13 one of the 20 most dangerous gangs in the United States, estimating that about 500 members operated in Texas under a regional cell model. From 2012 to 2017, the U.S. Treasury Department classified MS-13 as a transnational criminal organization. The Treasury Department also imposed sanctions on 6 MS-13 leaders. Among them was Borromeo Enrique Enriquez Solorzano, known as El Diablo Pequeño or El Diablito de Hollywood. Despite being imprisoned in El Salvador, he was still considered the gang's Central American leader. The FBI formed a specialized task force to tackle MS-13. Chris Swecker, head of the FBI's Criminal Investigative Division, stated, "We don't view MS-13 as just another gang. Two distinct characteristics make them especially concerning. First, they are extremely violent. Second, they have evolved into an international organization, present not just in most U.S. states, but also in 5 Central American countries. And now, they have begun to emerge in Europe. The initial strategy to combat MS-13 was mass deportation, which inadvertently led to a rapid spread of MS-13 branches in Mexico and Central America. The gang's membership surged to an estimated 50,000 members. In Honduras, MS-13 once hijacked a bus and executed 28 passengers. Despite its flaws, deportation remains a crucial component of U.S. policy. Under Operation Community Shield, launched 9 months ago, over 1,600 gang members, more than half of them from MS-13, were arrested, with most being deported from the U.S. However, according to Ismail Cisnerin, deportation is not an effective solution. They deported me, and I came back. Everyone they deport will find a way to return to the U.S. He admitted that before Brenda's murder, he had been deported to Mexico after stabbing someone in Virginia in 2012. The sole witness in Brenda's murder, who testified against the perpetrators in exchange for amnesty, now faces deportation. His attorneys, Frank Salvato and Alex Leve, are fighting to keep him in the United States. He risked his life to testify and help capture the murderers of Brenda. In doing so, he placed both his own life and his family's in grave danger. We are genuinely worried about what could happen to him if he is deported back to El Salvador, the attorneys expressed. In an interview with the television show 60 Minutes, the witness shared his fears. "I'm terrified. They will kill me. My family will be in danger. I have nowhere left to run." Brenda's close friend, who also agreed to testify against MS-13, was asked how likely she thought it was that she would survive. She responded, "There's no chance. I can protect myself and hide from the gang for now. But once they find me, believe me, they won't show me even the slightest mercy." When asked by the 60 Minutes interviewer if she believed she could survive another 2 years, she silently nodded. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security maintains that deportation is a useful tool, especially when police lack sufficient evidence for formal prosecution and arrests. However, in September of this year, the FBI launched a coordinated raid targeting MS-13 across 5 countries, capturing and neutralizing 650 suspects within 24 hours. Inspector Chris Swecker stated, "A realistic time frame for crippling MS-13 is probably 3 to 5 years. We may not be able to eliminate them entirely, but our main goal is to push them into a situation where they can no longer freely commit crimes anywhere, at any time, as they do now." Additionally, the Central and Southern California Prosecutor's Office issued a 78-page indictment, charging 21 MS-13 members and associates operating in the Los Angeles area. The defendants were accused of engaging in violent acts, including murdering rivals and targeting those who cooperated with law enforcement in various violent incidents across Southern California. MS-13's infamous motto is Mata, Viola, Controla, Kill, Rape, Control. When it comes to murder, MS-13 members prefer to use cold weapons like knives and machetes. To expand their territory, MS-13 actively recruits refugees from Central American countries. The gang's initiation process for new members is notoriously brutal, consisting of 2 horrifying steps. First, new recruits must endure a violent beating from senior members that lasts exactly 13 seconds. Then, the initiates are required to commit a crime for the gang, which is often murder. Once the initiation is complete, new members are permanently marked with tattoos on their faces, chests, and across their bodies, making their affiliation unmistakable. Some MS-13 factions will go as far as executing anyone who dares to defect from a gang. According to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, MS-13 members are present in 46 out of 50 U.S. states. A 2008 FBI report estimated that MS-13 had between 6,000 to 10,000 members in the United States, making it one of the largest criminal organizations in the country. However, MS-13's influence stretches far beyond U.S. borders. The FBI reports that the gang has over 60,000 members across Central America. Salvadoran police estimate that MS-13 generates around $31.2 million annually for drug trafficking, extortion, and human trafficking. In October 2012, the U.S. Department of the Treasury froze MS-13's financial accounts and officially designated it as a transnational criminal organization. MS-13 became the first street gang to be considered as dangerous as major international criminal groups like Mexico's Zetas, Japan's Yakuza, and Italy's Mafia organizations. Because of its reputation for violence, MS-13 earned the trust of the Sinaloa cartel, one of the largest and most powerful drug trafficking organizations in the world. The cartel frequently hired MS-13 to carry out revenge killings, drug trafficking, human smuggling, and acts of sexual violence. On December 3, 2022, Salvadoran President Nayib Bukele deployed a security force of 10,000 soldiers and agents in an effort to dismantle what was believed to be a major criminal stronghold in a suburb of San Salvador, the country's capital. After nearly a year, Mexican authorities captured a high-ranking MS-13 leader who had been on the United States Most Wanted list. Elmer Canales Rivera, also known as the Hollywood Thug, a senior leader of the MS-13 criminal network, was arrested in Mexico and extradited to the United States, according to sources from the U.S. Embassy, as reported by AFP on November 10, 2023. According to crime research organization Insight Crime, citing sources in Tapachula, Canales Rivera was arrested in Tapachula, a city near the Mexico-Guatemala border. The area is known as a key route for illegal migration. Canales Rivera had previously been imprisoned in El Salvador, but was never extradited to the United States. Despite facing charges that could have led to a 40-year sentence, he was quietly released in November 2021 and immediately fled the country. President Nayib Bukele later shared the news of Canales Rivera's capture on social media, but did not provide further details. According to Stephen Dudley, a researcher at the Latin American Center at American University in Washington, Canales Rivera was one of MS-13's 12 historical leaders, second only to the gang's highest-ranking leader, Borromeo Enrique Enriquez. Within the organization, Canales Rivera was considered the second most powerful figure. On March 2, 2008, on his way home, Jamil Shah, a promising young man, was stopped by a member of the 18th Street Gang. Just because of the Spider-Man bag slung over his shoulder, he was ruthlessly shot to death, as if executed. This is the story of 5 teenage killers who joined the 18th Street Gang, a notorious group known for its unimaginable brutality. The 18th Street Gang, also known as Barrio 18, is wreaking havoc across Southern California with a staggering 20,000 members. To put it in perspective, this gang is 20 times larger than an average local gang, making even the infamous Bloods and Crips seem small in comparison. According to authorities, 18th Street is not only one of the most violent gangs, but also the one producing the most criminals nationwide. Wherever the 18th Street Gang appears, the lives of residents grow darker than ever. Cars are stolen, homes are broken into, and on average, one person a day in Los Angeles falls victim to this gang. While their primary source of income comes from drug distribution, but their crimes extend far beyond anything imaginable. Brutal acts like murder, arson, extortion, kidnapping, and robbery have become routine. Gang expert Gabriel Kaufnader likened them to a cancer, a type of cancer that cannot be eradicated and only continues to grow. The 18th Street Gang kills thousands of people each year, using extortion to control neighborhoods, forcing residents to flee in order to save their lives. Within the 18th Street Gang, there is no single boss. Instead, they operate through a network of older members known as veterans, who oversee smaller groups within the gang and demand absolute loyalty to its values and goals. In secret meetings, the veterans share weapons, plan attacks, identify enemies, and even exchange information about the police. But when you step out onto the streets, you'll see another side of this gang. One new member of the 18th Street Gang. Little Mousy is only 9 years old. The harsh truth is that the 18th Street Gang resembles a child army. While older members stay hidden, young recruits are brought in to increase numbers and carry out criminal activities. A gang recruiter in Santa Ana has a clear strategy: target children aged 11 to 13 who seem lost, standing on the fringes of gang life. He approaches them by first instilling fear, but then appearing friendly, making the vulnerable children believe he's their friend, their protector. Once their defenses are lowered, he promises excitement and action that only the biggest gang in the area can provide. He tells them they'll have access to weapons, drugs, women, and support. He knows the key is to make everything look glamorous, avoiding talk of prison or violence, because if you scare them, you'll lose them. Those unfortunate children may feel invincible for a time, but reality will soon hit. When faced with a lifetime in prison or the prospect of death, they'll realize that life in a gang may not be worth the price. Now let's explore the true stories of 15 killers who joined the 18th Street Gang as mere children and see where their lives have taken them. Pedro Espinoza, a member of the 18th Street Gang with slick black hair and tattoos on his neck and arms, once proudly told a probation officer that his dream was to be sentenced to death for his loyalty. On November 9th, 2012, Pedro Espinoza's dream came true when he was sentenced to life in prison for murder, specifically for the killing of Jamil Shah II, a promising football player from high school. Jamil, a young man with exceptional talent, was tragically murdered while on his way home from a friend's house. What led Espinoza to such a brutal act? To understand this, we must look back into his past. Espinoza was brought to the U.S. by his mother from Mexico when he was just a child. Growing up in a neighborhood overrun by gang terror, he joined the 18th Street Gang at a very young age. He had a long criminal history, and just one day before Jamil was killed, Espinoza had been released by the Los Angeles Police Department, LAPD, after charges related to weapons possession. And what about Jamil Shah? Jamil was a junior, a star athlete with a bright future ahead of him. His talent had caught the attention of many prestigious colleges, promising a life full of hope, but tragedy struck when he crossed paths with Pedro Espinoza. On March 2nd, 2008, while returning home after practice, Jamil was suddenly confronted by two Hispanic men. They jumped out of a car and faced him, demanding to know which gang he belonged to. Unable to respond immediately, Jamil hesitated, and before he could say anything, Espinoza pointed a gun and shot him in the stomach. Jamil fell to the ground, desperately trying to shield his head with his hands, but Espinoza wasn't satisfied with just one shot. He fired again, this time at Jamil's head, as if carrying out a ruthless execution. Jamil's father, upon hearing the gunshots, rushed outside and held his son tightly as he took his last breath. Within an hour of Jamil's senseless death, police tracked down and arrested Espinoza. During the investigation, Espinoza nonchalantly admitted that he believed Jamil's red Spider-Man backpack symbolized his affiliation with the rival Rolling 20s gang. He showed no remorse, even claiming that he was ready to kill for his gang, no matter the severe consequences. On May 9th, 2012, Espinoza was convicted of first-degree murder. His guilty verdict included special circumstances that made him eligible for the death penalty. Thus, the jury sentenced him accordingly. Next is the story of Rigoberto Machado, who at just 16 years old faced charges related to the murder of Sarah Gutierrez Villatodor on November 29, 2019. It all began when Montgomery County Police received a call about a suspicious incident in a remote forest in Maryland. A hiker had stumbled upon the lifeless body of 19-year-old Sarah. The investigation revealed that she had been shot multiple times, and her death was ruled a homicide. As the investigation progressed, it became clear that 8 members of the notorious 18th Street Gang had been spotted near Sarah's house on the day of her murder. They had also appeared at the same location 3 weeks earlier, searching for the girl they planned to kill. But the question remained: what had Sarah done to provoke the gang's wrath? It turned out that Sarah had a complicated relationship with a member of the 18th Street Gang. He suspected her of being unfaithful and believed that she was involved with a member of their biggest rival gang, MS-13. This blind suspicion sealed Sarah's fate, driven by one cruel, impulsive act. Police quickly apprehended 4 individuals involved in this brutal murder: Jordan Ryan Moreno, 21-year-old; Jonathan Rivera Escobar, 19-year-old; Gay Giovanni Dominguez Escobar, 24-year-old, and Rigoberto Machado, 18-year-old. The gruesome details of the crime gradually unfolded as investigators pieced the events together. It all started one November evening when Sarah's boyfriend, who was also one of the accomplices, contacted her to arrange a meeting. The gang members gathered, picked Sarah up in Washington, and moved to a remote location in Maryland. When they arrived in a dark forest, the atmosphere turned oppressive and dangerous. Passing a gun between each other, they coldly and mercilessly shot Sarah at close range. The young girl was ruthlessly shot multiple times, and her lifeless body was discarded in the woods like a worthless object. The next day, during a routine traffic stop, Washington police arrested Dominguez, Escobar, Moreno, and Machado, who were unintentionally caught while in hiding. On October 22, 2020, Machado was tried as an adult. After intense legal proceedings, he finally pled guilty and was sentenced to 50 years in prison, a decision that brought some hope for justice. Junior Zelaya Canales, a powerful leader within the 18th Street Gang, committed numerous brutal murders against anyone who dared oppose him. To be welcomed into his inner circle, one had to prove loyalty by committing murder. At just 21, Canales quickly climbed the gang's power ladder, carrying out multiple brutal crimes to solidify the group's reputation. Around 1 a.m. on September 12, 2016, the Hempstead Police Department received a report of gunfire near the intersection of Linden Avenue and Laurel Avenue. When they arrived, officers were horrified to find the body of Josue Guzman lying on the ground, shot in the back of the head, dead on the spot. It was Junior who ordered two lower-ranking members to carry out this murder as a way to prove their loyalty to the 18th Street Gang. This violent act was committed solely because Guzman was believed to have disrespected members of the gang. On July 9, 2017, Junior organized a shooting aimed at rival gang members in Woodhaven, Queens, during a territorial dispute. When the New York Police Department, NYPD, received a 911 call reporting gunfire, they quickly arrived at the scene and recovered 9mm shell casings. A month later, NYPD detectives obtained a search warrant for Zelaya Canales' apartment. During the search, they discovered a 9mm Ruger pistol with its serial number removed along with several bullets. Ballistic tests confirmed that the Ruger was the weapon used to fire the 9mm shell casings found at the scene of the shooting. Consequently, on December 11th, 2019, Junior Zelaya Canales was found guilty of murder related to organized crime activities and conspiracy to commit robbery. Rogelio Andrade and Alan Lobos, also members of the 18th Street Gang, were charged with murder on November 26, 1998. Over 5 years after a deadly fire claimed the lives of 3 women and 7 others in a Los Angeles apartment building near the western downtown area. Prosecutors wasted no time filing murder charges against the 2 men, Andrade and Lobos. Both 22 years old at the time, were accused of starting the fire as a way to intimidate an apartment manager who had attempted to evict drug dealers from the property. From the beginning, investigators suspected that gang members were behind the deadly blaze. However, it wasn't until another gang member, who had been arrested for an unrelated murder, spoke up and revealed the identities of the arsonists at the Burlington building that police were able to identify the culprits. It didn't take long for them to arrest Andrade, while Lobos was already serving time for another murder. Both Lobos and Andrade joined the 18th Street Gang at a young age and had a long history of encounters with law enforcement. Their most serious crime occurred in 1997 when Lobos shot and killed Alexandro Garcia, a man who was simply waiting for a bus to school. He was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 15 years to life for the brutal act. But what about the deadly fire? On May 3, 1993, the 69-unit apartment building at 330 Burlington was just one of many in the impoverished Westlake community, a neighborhood frequently plagued by gang violence. Just hours before the fire broke out, the building manager had ordered 2 men to leave the premises, suspecting them to be drug dealers. On that sweltering afternoon, flames erupted, turning the apartment complex into a living hell. Residents panicked and scrambled to escape the fire, climbing down fire escapes or tying bedsheets together to create makeshift ropes to save themselves from the balconies. Neighbors quickly formed human chains in a desperate attempt to rescue those trapped on the upper floors. But in the darkness and chaos, 5 doors on the second and third floors had been blocked or nailed shut, condemning many victims to die of suffocation. The investigation following this tragic accident revealed a shocking truth. The apartment building had been a hub for the 18th Street Gang's dark drug trade. These dealers were making thousands of dollars daily, a significant portion of which flowed from the Burlington building. Initially, both Lobos and Andrade were charged as adults. However, a surprising turn of events occurred on January 7th, 2000, when prosecutors announced that all murder charges against the two 18th Street Gang members were being dropped. They declared that there wasn't enough evidence to prove that Lobos and Andrade had caused the horrific fire. The witness testimony that had led to their arrests no longer held up after further investigation. As a result, Andrade was released while Lobos remained in prison, still serving time for his previous conviction. But our story doesn't end there. In 2017, after decades of investigation, police made an unexpected breakthrough. They announced the arrest of 3 suspects, 2 men and 1 woman, finally delivering justice for one of the most catastrophic fires in Los Angeles history. Notably, all 3 were members of the 18th Street Gang, and they pled guilty to manslaughter, admitting their gang affiliations. This development led to questions about the true role of Andrade and Lobos. Were they actually involved from the very beginning? Catarino Gonzalez Jr., just 23 years old, was sentenced to life in prison without parole on June 21, 2001. The news brought relief to Gonzalez's family, as the jury did not recommend the death penalty. His brother Oscar revealed that Catarino's life spiraled into chaos after he left Crenshaw to join the Marine Corps. In their neighborhood, if you didn't have a strong older brother as a role model, you were almost certain to fall into gang life, and Catarino chose to join the notorious 18th Street Gang. Since then, he had repeatedly found himself in trouble with the law. But what exactly did Catarino do to earn a life sentence? On August 9, 1998, LAPD officer Filber Cuesta and his partner Richard Gabaldon were on patrol when they came across a group of gang members getting ready to attend a wedding party. They witnessed the gang members draw guns and threaten the party's host and guests. In a moment of fear and panic, the officers decided to wait for backup in their car, but they didn't anticipate the hail of bullets that was about to rain down on them. The rear windshield suddenly shattered. The car lurched forward and then veered left, crashing into a parked vehicle. When Officer Gabaldon looked over at his partner, Cuesta had slumped over, his head resting on his chest, blood pouring from a head wound. Gabaldon stepped out of the car, his hand ready, aiming in the direction of the gunfire. He saw 3 or 4 men dart out from the corner firing toward him, but they quickly fled the scene. 2 witnesses had observed the shooting and both identified Gonzalez as the main shooter. In his trial, Gonzalez claimed that he believed the officers were there to arrest him for a parole violation. However, the circumstances surrounding the case told a different story. Gonzalez was indeed on parole for a drug-related offense when the shooting took place. So who was the arresting officer in this case? It was none other than Filber Cuesta. Upon seeing Cuesta sitting in the patrol car, Gonzalez made the despicable decision to ambush Cuesta from behind and end his life. It didn't stop there. Just 5 days before the shooting, Gonzalez had been arrested on suspicion of drinking in public. The very next day, officers found spray paint in Gonzalez's car, suggesting he was planning to retaliate against the police. When Gonzalez stood before the judge, there was no sympathy for him. His sentence, a lifetime in prison without parole and with no way out. Now try to put yourself in the shoes of these young men. After being constantly told by their leaders that they were invincible, they now face the dire consequences of their own actions. Do they still believe that unwavering loyalty to the gang was worth the price of their lives? Sadly, most of them didn't realize it until it was too late.
A humble child born in the obscurity of a small town embarked on a path of crime and became a giant that shook the very foundations of society. That child was none other than Husan Baybasin, an innocent boy who transformed into Europe's most notorious drug lord, often compared to Pablo Escobar. By the age of 20, Husan had already found himself in serious trouble after being caught with cannabis, setting the stage for a life filled with crime. But how did an ordinary boy from Turkey rise to the throne of the European underworld? What drove him to build such a devastating criminal empire? Husan was born on December 25, 1956 in Lais, a small impoverished town in southeastern Turkey. This region, predominantly Kurdish, was often plagued by economic hardship and political conflict, making the youth vulnerable to being drawn into a life of crime. Hussein's family was no exception. They struggled to make ends meet, which likely influenced Hussein's later choices in life. His first brush with the law came in 1976 when he was just 20 years old. During a police raid at his home in Lice, authorities discovered 11 kilograms of cannabis, a significant quantity that indicated he had already become deeply involved in the drug trade. Lice's proximity to major drug smuggling routes from the Middle East to Europe explains why he became involved in drug trafficking so early on. Hussein may have used his connections to acquire the cannabis, suggesting that he was not just a small-time dealer, but a significant player in the drug trade network. This incident led to Hussein being sentenced to 2 years in prison, but instead of deterring him, his time behind bars exposed him to more criminals and allowed him to learn more about the underworld. Upon his release, he returned more determined and prepared for a larger role in organized crime, eventually becoming one of Europe's most infamous drug lords. Before reaching the pinnacle of his career, Hussein faced numerous betrayals. Many of his former allies became enemies due to power struggles. This forced Hussein to leave the region and seek greater opportunities elsewhere, setting his sights on the United Kingdom. In 1984, Husan Baybasin's criminal career escalated dramatically with a significant operation in the UK. During Operation Takedown, he was arrested for heroin trafficking and possession of a fake passport. This operation was coordinated by officers from the Metropolitan Police who had been tracking the movement of heroin from Afghanistan through Turkey into Europe. Hussein was identified as a key figure in this network. His arrest was the culmination of months of surveillance and intelligence gathering. Officers had monitored him after intercepting communications related to large shipments of heroin. He was finally apprehended in a sting operation where undercover officers posed as buyers. This operation was carried out amid growing concerns over the increasing flow of heroin into the UK, which was causing severe social and health impacts. Hussein was tried and sentenced to 12 years in prison. However, his time in the UK was surprisingly short. After just 4 years, he was transferred back to Turkey in a mysterious move. Official documents did not clearly explain the reasons for this transfer, but it is suspected that diplomatic negotiations might have been involved. Hussein's release just 4 months after being transferred from the UK to Turkey in 1989 sparked a wave of rumors and accusations of government corruption. Many believed that there were hidden forces and powerful connections working behind the scenes to secure his early release. However, Hussein's freedom was short-lived. Just 4 days after his release, he was arrested again in Sivas, a city near Istanbul. This time, the charges were more severe: drug possession and illegal possession of firearms. It was clear that Hussein had quickly returned to his criminal ways, seemingly learning no lessons from his time in prison. Reports indicated that at the time of his arrest, Hussein was in possession of a large amount of heroin and an unlicensed gun. It is highly likely that he had arranged to obtain these items while still in prison through his corrupt network, which included local officials. This network allowed him to swiftly resume his criminal activities, highlighting the deep-rooted corruption and the connections he had with other criminals. Despite the seriousness of his crimes, which should have led to a long prison sentence, but Hussein was not held for long. His quick departure from Turkey without further legal trouble demonstrated just how powerful his network was. This network included not only other criminals, but also influential figures in politics and law enforcement, allowing him to manipulate the system to his advantage. However, Hussein's reckless and brazen actions angered many, and the world had yet to witness the peak of his power. After fleeing Turkey, Hussein chose Amsterdam as the strategic base for his heroin empire. The city, known for its large port and position as a key logistical hub in Europe, became the perfect point for distributing heroin across the continent. Choosing Amsterdam was a strategic move, taking advantage of established smuggling routes and the city's relatively lenient policies, and Husan didn't act alone. While Husan was busy establishing his drug trafficking network in Amsterdam, his brother, Husan Baybasin, was building a similar operation in North London, another key location that provided access to the lucrative UK market. This strategic regional division between the brothers allowed them to expand their influence and control over the European heroin market. Husan's empire revolved around the heroin trade originating from Afghanistan, the primary producer of opium, the raw material used to process heroin. The drugs were transported through Iran and Turkey, taking advantage of the loose borders and the chaotic political situation in the region. From Turkey, where Husan had established close relationships with local power brokers, the heroin was shipped to Amsterdam and from there distributed across Western Europe. This network was not just a drug trafficking enterprise, but a smoothly operating machine, exploiting regional instability in Asia and liberal policies in Europe. Unlike many other drug lords, Husan was quite open about his criminal activities. He frequently appeared in the media, discussing his operations and his influence in power circles in both Turkey and the Kurdish community. This bold public stance was a double-edged sword. On one hand, it solidified his reputation as a leader unafraid of the law, which may have enhanced his standing in the underworld. On the other hand, this openness provided law enforcement agencies with valuable information to use against him. Interviews and public statements by Husan painted a portrait of a man full of contradictions, both a cunning businessman and a brutal crime lord. He proudly boasted about his close ties with powerful networks, including NATO officers and the Turkish embassy, whom Husan claimed had facilitated his drug trafficking operations with ease. Husan not only built a vast drug empire, but also crafted an image of a smart entrepreneur mixed with the audacity of a notorious gangster. He defied both the authorities and his rivals by maintaining a prominent media presence while still running a large-scale drug smuggling network, showcasing the sophistication and complexity of his control over power and influence in the underworld. Like any empire in the criminal world, Husan's reign eventually had to collapse. In 1998, his empire came to a dramatic end when Husan was arrested in the Netherlands in a large-scale operation involving several European countries. This operation, named Operation Nemesis, was the result of collaboration between police forces from the UK, Italy, Belgium, Germany, and the Netherlands. These agencies had closely monitored Husan's every move for years, piecing together clues related to the heroin network he operated across Europe. On March 27, 1998, a swift raid took place in a small village in North Holland, the Netherlands. At the location where Husan was apprehended, authorities found irrefutable evidence linking him to criminal activities, including documents related to money laundering from drug transactions, and even information about a murder he was alleged to be involved in. The charges Husan faced included conspiracy to commit murder, kidnapping, drug trafficking, and leading a criminal organization. His arrest was a major victory for European law enforcement, demonstrating the power of international cooperation in the fight against drug smuggling and organized crime. The subsequent trial attracted significant public attention. The prosecution's focus was on phone recordings, which clearly captured Husan discussing drug deals and issuing orders for violent acts. These recordings became a central point of controversy when Husan's defense argued that they had been tampered with and could not be considered reliable evidence. However, the truth was too clear to deny. In February 2001, Husan was convicted on multiple charges, including conspiracy to commit murder and drug trafficking. The court sentenced him to life in prison, a sentence reflecting the severity of his crimes and the wealth of evidence collected through wiretaps. The life of a drug lord inevitably comes with its consequences. Since his imprisonment in 2001, Husan has faced severe mental health issues. Reports indicate that he developed chronic post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and somatization disorder. Hussein's PTSD included severe anxiety attacks, flashbacks, and prolonged psychological distress related to painful experiences both before and after his arrest. Somatization disorder manifested through physical symptoms like pain and discomfort without clear medical causes, believed to be driven by psychological stress. These mental health issues have worsened over time, significantly impacting Hussein's ability to function daily and his interactions with prison staff and other inmates. He has undergone multiple psychiatric evaluations and requires special medical interventions within the prison system. Despite being incarcerated, rumors that Husain continued to control his drug empire never died down. It is believed that through encrypted communications and visits, he was still able to issue orders and manage operations from behind bars. Moreover, his family, particularly his siblings and close associates, are believed to have played an active role in maintaining the organization's operations. The involvement of his family ensured that even while imprisoned, Hussein's power remained intact, allowing him to continue controlling the drug trade from the shadows. Although Hussein's claims are difficult to verify, but law enforcement agencies across Europe have not taken them lightly. This reflects the deep infiltration of the criminal networks Hussein had skillfully built and the challenges of completely dismantling such organizations. One shocking aspect of Hussein's case is his claim that his criminal activities were not only tolerated, but also sponsored by the Turkish government. According to him, this cooperation was not voluntary, but was coerced, involving collusion at the highest levels of government. Hussein alleged that powerful figures within Turkish politics and law enforcement not only permitted, but sometimes directed his drug trafficking operations, turning them into part of sophisticated geopolitical strategies. These bold statements suggest that Hussein's criminal empire did not serve only his interests, but also acted as a tool for the hidden political and economic agendas of Turkish officials. These allegations sparked numerous investigations, but uncovering concrete evidence has proven extremely difficult due to the thick veil of corruption, politics, and international intrigue. The continued surveillance of Hussein's network, even while he is imprisoned, demonstrates the European agency's determination to root out the drug empire he operated. However, this case also highlights the significant challenges these agencies face, from jurisdictional limitations and differences in legal systems to the need for intelligence sharing and coordinated action on a global scale. The fight against Hussein's criminal empire is not just a battle against an individual, but against a complex and powerful criminal system. What do you think about this story? Please leave your thoughts in the comments below for everyone to see. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support me. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.